LBU. LBU.
LBU, LBU,
LBU.
LBU, LBU, LBU.
LBU.
Our story begins in the spring of 2020. A browser game, a map, colored territories expanding across a blank world, territorial.io. You spawned, you expanded, you survived. Simple, addictive, competitive, and for a moment, that was enough. Players competed for leaderboard spots, content creators built audiences, rivalries were formed. But the ceiling was there, invisible but real. There were no structured tournaments, no evolving competitive ecosystem, no deeper strategic layers to push the best players further. The concept was powerful, but the ambition hadn't caught up yet. And then everything evolved. OpenFront didn't replace the game, it expanded it, it redefined it. Territorial was expansion, OpenFront became strategy. At first, it was simple, a city, just buildings, production, growth. Then came control, warships, oceans mattered now. And then, something different appeared. The atom, the hydrogen, and the MERV. Suddenly, survival wasn't enough anymore. You needed vision, coordination, structure. OpenFront didn't just add features, it added consequences. And that's when winning started to mean something. And when something begins to matter, people compete for it. Every competitive scene reaches this moment. The moment where casual play isn't enough. Where structure replaces chaos. Where champions are crowned. OpenFront had reached that moment. The first official tournament was announced. Not a weekly event, not a casual bracket. A global stage. The best teams, the highest stakes, and $1,500 on the line. The first Worlds. For the first time, it wasn't about ranking. It was about a title, about being part of the first team written into history. Every esport game remembers its first champions. The team that sets the tone. The team that defines what winning looks like. OpenFront was about to crown its own. May 10th, 2025. 30 teams have made it through. The World Championship Finals are set. Duos. Up to 10 games to survive the field. Points to earn your place. And once you reach the final stage, one victory to take it all. Some were chasing history. Some were chasing validation. Numerous teams were French. And until this day, the French scene is impossible to ignore. Among them, LBU. We're only 3 months into the game, but before there was an official stage, they were already winning. Unofficial brackets, community tournaments, they had built chemistry early. And in the format built on duos, chemistry mattered. But unofficial success means nothing at Worlds. History doesn't remember scrims, it remembers champions. 10 games to prove consistency, one final victory to prove supremacy. From the very first match, LBU didn't look surprised by the stage. They looked ready. The opening games confirmed it. One win, then another. Back to back. 2 victories. Enough points to place them in a finalist position early. And that's when the dynamic shifted. The target grew larger, other teams adapted, pressure mounted. The third win never came. But neither did it for any other team. The format demanded a final stage. 4 teams remained. A single victory would decide everything. And when the moment arrived, it didn't last long. 8 minutes, 41 seconds. That's all it took. LBU dismantled the final. Clean, controlled, unquestioned. The first OpenFront World Champions. LBU. But LBU wasn't just a name. It was built on initials. Lukashu, Bobo, the L and the B. The foundation. The U came from a player named Universe, a name tied to the earliest community days. Though he never stepped onto the Worlds stage, the tag remained. At the Worlds, LBU wasn't a duo, it was a unit of 4. Lukashu Bobo, as well as Biffer and Underall. 2 would start each game, 2 would rotate in. The format demanded endurance, LBU brought flexibility. For Underall, that tournament would be his only appearance on the competitive scene. But history doesn't measure only longevity, it also remembers who was there first. Lukashu would remain one of the founding figures of LBU, but at the time he was more than that. In the early days of Open Front, his name was everywhere. Consistency, mechanics, game sense. If there had been an MVP award at that first Worlds, it undoubtedly would have been his. A name forever attached to the beginning. Biffer's Worlds run would also be his only appearance under the LBU banner. But his journey didn't end there. Different tags, different rosters, same competitive hunger. Bobo wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but he didn't need to be. Stability, discipline, presence. His value wasn't always visible, but it was always there. He would continue for a time before ownership and direction shifted. And with that shift came a new era. The victory was historic, but it wasn't enough. One title doesn't create a legacy, consistency does. After the Worlds, LBU stopped being a random community tag. It became a project. A Discord server was created. Recruitment began. Official roster lists replaced informal groupings. What started as initials became infrastructure. The early months were quieter. Smaller tournaments, free-for-all formats. Nothing global, nothing historic. But the results were consistent. Then came the first summer major. Duos again. A larger stage, a stronger field. By now, LBU weren't defending a single title. They were defending an expectation. LBU didn't send one team. They sent 2. The first duo, NWI, a name that would later become synonymous with LBU's identity, alongside Dekwon, whose presence at this major would be brief but decisive. On the other side, Bobo continued to anchor the tag, with him ADN, a steady player, composed, part of the original roster. Both duos reached the final. They finished first and second. It wasn't a win, it was a statement. LBU wasn't just capable of winning, they were capable of shaping the tournament itself. After this summer major, the fear was real. LBU had proven depth, they had proven structure, but Open Front was bigger than tournaments. Outside of official competition, the game was dominated by something else. Clans. A clan isn't just an organization, it's an identity. A tag before your name, a banner you carry into every public match. Some clans are massive, we're talking about thousands of members. United Nations, for example, UN, a name that controlled the public lobbies. Others rose through visibility, through content, through audience. The Mole clan, built around French YouTuber Molkey, one of the rare clans to hold its ground against the sheer scale of UN. But size wasn't the only form of power. Cynosure, also known as Sin or CYN, smaller than the giants but increasingly visible. But LBU was different. 10 official members at most, no mass recruitment, no lobby domination, just competition. But competition was about to change. For the first time, the world of structured tournaments would collide with the world of massive clans. Clan Wars. This wasn't a simple bracket, it was pride on a global scale. Numbers, coordination, reputation. LBU entered as specialists, refined, focused, built for controlled environments. And at that exact moment, a new name entered the scene. Another French team, smaller. Hungrier? Maybe. Shaped not for numbers, but for competition. Just like LBU, they weren't built for scale. They were built to win. Founded by former members of one of Territorial IO's most powerful communities, the FR Clan, Holcura, Sidious, names that carried experience from a different era of competitive play. Alongside them, a rising presence of the FFA scene, Mortality, a name that would soon become impossible to ignore. Experience wasn't an issue. Ambition wasn't either. Antares, ATR. Clan Wars would be their first tournament. No warm-up, No slow introduction, straight into the battlefield. For that tournament, they strengthened their roster, and one familiar name joined them temporarily, Biffer. It was their debut, but they didn't hesitate. They won. First tournament, first title. And just like that, Open Front had two elite French projects, LBU and ATR. And in their very first appearance, ATR did something no one else had managed to do competitively. They beat LBU. The LBU specialists had entered dangerous territory, and for the first time, they were outplayed. It wasn't a collapse, it wasn't the end, but it was a message. LBU were no longer alone at the top. The defeat didn't dismantle LBU, but it changed the atmosphere. For the first time, doubt existed. Then came the Tournament of Brilliance, a free-for-all format. No duos, no teams, just ego. Organized by the Sin Clan. A modest prize pool, but in FFA the prize isn't money, it's status. Lucashu returned after time away from the game. Was it to remind everyone or to protect their name? He placed third, the highest LBU finish, being passed on the last game by Biffer for second place. Green Biscuit walked away with the trophy, a UN member. It wasn't a team tournament, but it didn't feel like a victory either. Then came something bigger, structured, broadcasted, watched. The Open Front League. 13 of the best teams, 3 weeks, league phase and a finals weekend. 400 euros on the line. And once again, LBU entered as favorites. But the league phase didn't go as planned. Close calls, narrow escapes, a final match that had to be won just to qualify. 6th place, the final qualifying spot. It wasn't dominance anymore. It was survival. And in the semifinals, they fell. UN lifted the trophy, ATR and Sin stood in the final, LBU watched. The defeats didn't stop there. September, Clan Wars. Sin lifted the trophy. October, ATR claimed their second crown, in what was the last Clan Wars until this date. Autumn Major, UN rose to the top. The pattern was clear. Open Front was evolving, the meta grew denser, more structured, more competitive, raw talent was no longer enough. Natural skill could win games, but cohesion won tournaments. And inside LBU, there was understanding. Something had to change. That change didn't come from the outside. It came from within. Batista had joined shortly after the first Worlds. He had seen the highs, he had felt the losses, he understood the identity of LBU. He wasn't the loudest voice on the field, he wasn't the one calling every play, but behind the scenes, he was building something. He played, but he planned. And when the defeats stacked up, he didn't panic. He recalibrated, not to replace talent, but to organize it. The era of instinct was over. Preparation became mandatory. The response wasn't loud. It was deliberate. The Belgian Globy, experienced, disciplined, 5th at the Tournament of Brilliance, a former SPQR member. Comet, young, promising, a long-term investment. And then came the pieces that would define the next era. D'Artagnan, Zorbit. D'Artagnan would become the spearhead, to many the best player in Open Front today. Zorbit was different, not always the headline, but essential, the balance behind the aggression. Alongside NWI, already emerging as a pillar of the new generation, together they formed a core built not on flashes of brilliance, but on cohesion. LBU wasn't rebuilding, they were evolving from a team of talent into a system. November 1st, 2025. The first real test of the new roster. Not a team tournament, FFA. The Tournament of Brilliance 2. Bigger than the first edition, twice the players, twice the prize pool, nearly 200 euros for the sole winner. In free-for-all, there are no excuses, no teammates to blame, no structure to hide behind, just performance. LBU entered 5 players. 5. Zorbit, 10th. Globy, 9th. Batista, 8th. NWI, 4th. D'Artagnan, 3rd. 5 players, all in the top 10. ATR had 1, UN had 2, SIN, the organizers, had none. LBU didn't just participate, they occupied the leaderboard. But above D'Artagnan, Mortality, ATR's Spearhead, 2nd place. And first, Biffer. The top 3 ended with the exact same point total, 50, and WI just 1 point behind. Placement averages decided the podium. Margins were microscopic. D'Artagnan had arrived, but the crown was still just out of reach. It wasn't a team trophy, but it was confirmation. The recalibration was working. And then the achievements didn't take long. The following weekend, an official warm-up tournament, duos, D'Artagnan, Zorbit, victory. Around the same time, D'Artagnan claimed the first 1v1 title. Slowly, the new core was proving itself. Then came the Open Front League Season 2. Bigger than before, a denser field, 16 teams, more league matches, 800 euros for the winning team. One season earlier, LBU had fallen short. This time, they returned prepared. 5 league matches, 3 victories, enough to secure first place. Direct qualification to the finals. While LBU climbed, others struggled. UN barely qualified for the semis in 6th place. SIN collapsed to 11th. ATR fell short of qualification in 7th. The hierarchy was shifting again. 4 teams remained in the final. LBU, UN, MOL, WSHP. First to 3 victories would take the title. Match 1, UN. Match 2, LBU. Match 3, WSHP. Match 4, LBU. Match 5, UN. And as the 6th match unfolded, something became clear. The other teams were cooperating. Legal troop transfers, shared pressure, coordinated efforts to slow one core. D'Artagnan and WI Zorbit. It didn't matter. Even united, the opposition couldn't stop them. 3 victories after only 6 games. Championship secured. This wasn't revenge, it was confirmation. The recalibration had worked. LBU weren't surviving anymore, they were dictating. The era of instinct had produced champions. The era of structure produced control. The victory at OPL 2 didn't slow LBU down. If anything, it accelerated them. Winter arrived, bringing the next major. 10 teams, 5 matches, each victory worth $150. LBU entered with 2 rosters, Batista, Comet, Globy, and on the other side, D'Artagnan and WI Zorbit. 5 matches were played, LBU won 3 of them. D'Arta's trio secured the maximum 2 victories, Batista's roster added another, 3 wins out of 5 possible. The winter major belonged to LBU. Months later, the spring major followed. Qualification groups first. Both LBU rosters advanced. D'Artagnan's team dominated their group, Batista's roster secured their place as well, and when the finals began, D'Artagnan and WI and Zorbit opened with back-to-back victories. The leaderboard never recovered. Another major, another trophy, another confirmation. What began as a rebuild had become a dynasty. But dynasties don't survive by standing still, they evolve. And LBU has begun looking beyond the present. The next step isn't another roster, it is the future. The creation of the LBU Academy, a place to develop young players, to find the next generation before the rest of the scene does. Because for the first time, LBU isn't just competing in open front, they are helping shape it. And the ambitions don't stop there. Recently, the organization announced its intention to open an international roster, expanding beyond its original French roots. A sign that the project has grown far beyond the small competitive tag it once was. Meanwhile, whispers have begun circulating across the community. Rumors of familiar names. Lukashu, Bobo, 2 players tied to the very beginning of the story. Could they return for the upcoming Worlds in May? What is certain is that the game has changed, and so has LBU. What began as a handful of competitors chasing a title has become something bigger. A structure, a system, an identity. In OpenFront's history, many teams have risen, but few have shaped an era. And the story of LBU is still being written. Just wanted to pull out a couple words at the end. I know many of you may have never played this game before, and that's okay. The goal of this video isn't to bring more players to OpenFront, nor it is to, compare it to the biggest esport competitive scenes. It's just simply to share a small world of mine, a world that gives me passion and joy, and hopefully for a few moments I was able to share that with you.